By 1815, the world had grown weary of war. For over 2 decades, Europe had bled under the boots of French armies, marched to the glory and ruin by one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. Emperor of the French, master of continental Europe, the man who reshaped nations, crowned kings, and humbled empires. But his dream of domination came crashing down in 1814. Allied armies entered Paris, Napoleon abdicated, he was exiled to the tiny Mediterranean island of Elba. Europe breathed a sigh of relief. They thought their nightmare was over. Hello, and welcome to Deadliest Disasters. In March of 1815, news thundered across Europe. Napoleon had escaped Elba, and with breathtaking speed, he marched back to Paris, rallying the French army once more. Within weeks, 100 days had begun. Europe stood on the brink of war once again. Napoleon's return sent shockwaves through Europe. Old enemies scrambled to form a new coalition, the Seventh Coalition. Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia all vowed to crush the Corsican general. Napoleon knew time was against him. The Allies were massing in Belgium. If he struck quickly, if he could defeat the British and Prussians separately, he might yet force a favorable peace. He crossed the border into Belgium on June 15th, launching a bold offensive. At Ligny on June 16th, he defeated the Prussians under Field Marshal Blücher, but crucially, he failed to destroy them. Meanwhile, his subordinate, Marshal Ney, fought the British at Quatre Bras without decisive result. The British commander, the Duke of Wellington, fell back to a ridge near the village of Waterloo. There, he prepared to make his stand. Dawn broke on Sunday, June 18th, under gray skies and sodden fields. Rain the night before had turned the terrain to mud, a factor that would slow the French attack. Napoleon's army numbered about 73,000 men with 250 guns. Wellington had around 68,000 troops, a mix of British, Dutch, Belgian, and German soldiers with 156 guns. But Wellington was counting on reinforcements. Blücher had promised to march to his aid. Napoleon delayed the assault until late morning, hoping the ground would dry. It was a critical mistake. At around 11:30 a.m., the battle begun. The French launched a fierce assault on Hougoumont, a walled farmhouse on Wellington's right flank. It was meant to be a diversion, but it turned into a bloody grind. British guardsmen held the position with iron resolve. French waves broke upon its walls again and again. To the east, French infantry attacked La Haye-Saint, a farmhouse at the center of the Allied line. This too became a fortress, stubbornly held by the King's German Legion. By mid-afternoon, Marshal Ney believed he saw the British retreating, but in fact they were merely repositioning. Acting on impulse, Ney ordered a massive cavalry assault without infantry or artillery support. Thousands of French cuirassiers and dragoons thundered across the field, sabers drawn, but Wellington infantry formed squares, tight, bristling formations of bayonets impervious to cavalry. Again and again the French charged, and again they were repulsed. Horses fell screaming, riders were thrown, the fields turned red with blood and churned earth. Ney's blunder had cost Napoleon dearly. As the day wore on, the sound of distant cannon fire grew louder, this time from the east. Blücher was arriving. At first, Napoleon dispatched a corps under General Lebeau to hold them back, but the Prussians pressed on relentlessly. Their arrival tipped the balance. Now Wellington could go on the offensive. But Napoleon still had one card left to play, the Imperial Guard. Around 7:30 p.m., the Emperor committed his elite troops, the Middle and Old Guard, to the center. These were veterans of Austerlitz, Jena, and Wagram, men who had never known defeat. They marched with grim determination up the ridge toward the British lines, but Wellington had held back fresh troops ready to fight. As the Guard advanced, British regiments rose from the tall grass and unleashed a withering volley. The Guard faltered, then they broke. For the first time in history, the Imperial Guard had retreated. Cries of "La Garde recule," the guard is retreating, spread panic through the French ranks. The army collapsed and chaos ensued. Napoleon fled the field, narrowly avoiding capture. His dream of empire was shattered. On June 22nd, he abdicated once more. But this time, there would be no leniency. The British refused to risk another escape. Napoleon was exiled again, this time to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. The island is surrounded by vast expanses of ocean, the closest land around 1,210 miles west of the coast of southwestern South Africa and 2,500 miles east of Brazil. There, surrounded by barren rock and constant surveillance, the once great conqueror withered. He had died 6 years later in 1821 at the age of 51. His empire was gone, but his legacy would echo through the centuries. The Battle of Waterloo marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars and ushered in nearly a century of uneasy peace in Europe. The Battle of Waterloo was one of the highest single-day casualty counts of the Napoleonic Wars. 25,000 of Napoleon's men were killed or injured, 8,000 captured as prisoners of war, and over 15,000 had deserted after the battle. The map of the continent was redrawn and monarchies restored. But the world Napoleon had shaped of mass conscripted armies, nationalism, and modern warfare had changed forever. Waterloo was not just a battle, it was the fall of an era, a final clash between the old world and the forces that would define the modern age. Thank you all for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and let me know what other topics you'd like me to cover. This has been Deadliest Disasters.